Welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be making some willow bark cordage, or at least sourcing some, and also I'll be carving a spoon. But first I need to source the materials. So I came across this down tree a while ago, so I'm going to take a branch. Now I've taken the branch off. What I've done here is I've taken the top of the branch that I cut. I've scraped the outer bark off this new sapling. I've poked it in the ground, and that will now root again and make a new tree. This in turn will help stop the bank that I'm stood on eroding even more. So now the materials are sourced, let's get to making it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for knots. If there's any knots in there, I'm just going to tidy them up a little bit so that after I've scraped it and it comes time to peeling it, the bark will come away from the knot without getting stuck and tearing. So as you can see with this knot, so I've just basically gone round, scored it with my knife as lightly as possible so I don't go too deep into the inner bark. We don't want to be creating holes all over the place, if that makes sense. Now I'm going to switch the blade to the fish disgorger and descaler, and I'm going to use the back of that to scrape off the outer bark. As you can see, you can also use the spine of your saw, or if you've got a fixed blade bushcraft knife, you can even use the spine on that. Just be careful though, because most bushcraft knives have got a really sharp spine and that could damage the inner bark, and we don't want that. So now all the outer bark's removed and I'm just left with the pale green underneath. I'm going to get my small blade out, but any blade will do, and I'm just going to score the full length from top to bottom, trying to keep it as straight as possible. That way you don't really get any shorter fibres, or not as many. So I'm just going to use the very tips of my fingers, and all I'm going to do is run my fingers down to ease the bark away from the wood. This time of year that's very easy because there's quite a lot of sap in the wood. Later on in the year it's still possible, it's just more difficult to get it off. So when choosing a piece of willow to actually make cordage out of, try and choose, the straightest possible that you can find with the least amount of branches shooting off it. So that means that there's going to be less knots. New growth tends to be much easier to work with. As you can see, this has come away in a nice large strip. You can actually use this to make containers with, and various other campcraft items. You can use it to weave baskets and so on and so forth. It's a really great resource and such a hardy tree as well in the UK. Great tree. So I'm just going to roll this up now. I'm going to pop it in my backpack to keep it try and keep some of the moisture in it, because it's a very warm day, so if it's inside the bag in the shade it'll fare better. Then I'm going to crack on with the next one. Exactly the same process as before. So I'm just using the tip of my blade just to prise the bark away from the wood. For anyone interested in foraging or wild edibles, this inner bark here actually contains aspirin. In fact, this is where aspirin comes from. So if you're ever out in the wilderness, you know, and you got a headache or a little bit of a gripe and you need some aspirin, then look for one of these. It's part of Mother Nature's chemist. As you can see, the length of this piece is much longer. Great for making bow drill strings, which is what I'll be doing with this piece. But I have to process this a little bit different, which will be in a later video. For this one, instead of using my fingertips, I'm just running my thumb up and down it. Seems very effective. And as if by magic, it's come off like a giant sheet of pasta. That's going to make a heck of a lot of cordage. A lot. Just going to roll this up for now, keep it nice and moist inside the bag, and then get on with the next task. It's actually possible to just roll it up, dry it out, and store it that way, and it'll last for a very long time. Then when you need to use it again, just soak it and it'll actually become supple again, just, you know, for informational purposes. And as always, you know, if I can find a use for something that I've processed, I'll use it. Save these for later. But for now, on with the cordage. So this is the longer piece. What I'm basically doing now is tearing it down strip by strip, make it more manageable. You can basically make these any size you want. So if you want really thick rope, you know, you can tear them down in like inch strips. It's entirely up to you what size you make the strips. I'm just doing them to my preference. There is easier ways of doing this. You can make a shear if you want to get the pieces more exact, you know. But to be fair, for what I need it for, it wasn't really worth me going and sourcing the wood to make a shear with. See, look at those awesome lengths of potential cordage there. The inner bark kind of reminds me of a little bit like leather when it's at this stage. You could actually use these as they are as lashings, you know, to build a shelter or that type of thing. You don't have to sit there and turn it into cordage, but you know, that's the aim of the video, isn't it? It's cordage. But yeah, you could just use them like this. Alternatively, you could just use a withy, which is basically a willow branch twisted up so that all the fibres are broken inside it, and use that. I'm just going to wrap these now. I've got a Scotland trip coming up at the end of next month, so what I'll probably do is let these dry out, take them with me. Then if there isn't a fire ban on, I can actually throw these over the fire in a pot with some ash. This will actually create a lye solution, and you get a couple of benefits from that. One being it helps preserve the fibres, so your fibres last longer, and two, it softens the fibres so it becomes much easier to work with. So when you're making the cordage, you can get the twists a lot tighter, and that basically means you get a stronger cordage and a more refined cordage at the end of it. So I'll use a couple of the smaller pieces just to make a rough cordage. We're starting off with it staggered. You always do that for piecing together. It's not been processed, so it will be a pretty rough cordage. I'm just going to start off with a standard twist. I'm not going to twist it until it kinks up, because obviously I'm going to put a loop in the end. Just using my thigh to help train the fibres in the bark. This helps with the actual process of twisting, keeps it nice and tight. There is a method to actually use your thigh to make the whole of the cordage, but to be fair, I prefer the traditional method because you can get the cordage tighter and the finished product tends to be a better quality cordage at the end of it. This is the same method of cordage as my other videos, so twist away from yourself, use your finger to hook it and pull it back. If you want to see a more in-depth way of doing that, I'll link the previous videos in the description for you. It was actually an extremely warm day, so the fibres were drying out pretty quick. So I just popped over to the river, give it a quick swill, and then it's back to making the cordage again. I kept looking back there because I actually heard voices on the little island behind me there. I was wondering if anyone was going to walk out. Note how it's always the top two strands that you twist away from yourself, and then use your finger to hook the other ones up. And then again, top one, you always twist the top one away from yourself and then hook with your finger to pull the other one back up. And your other hand, your finger and your thumb, always keep a pinch on the twists that you've already done. All you do is you move them up slightly every time you've done a twist. Now it's time to add a piece in, which is the same as on the other videos. Here I'm just using my thumbnail to break some of the strands off to make it a little bit thinner, and then I'll add the other piece to it. So I'll look for the thinnest end and add that to the thin one that I've just scraped with my nail, and then I just basically twist it in. And to finish, you just basically tie a knot in it. As you can see, it's a very strong cordage. I physically can't break it there. Extremely strong cordage. And this is just an idea of what else you can do with the materials once you've gathered them. You know, it's a shame to just sit there and waste them. So you may as well make things out of them. Just an interesting fact for you, that tree that I'm actually leaning against there, that got exposed by heavy rains, and that's actually down at a level where we used to find old Victorian bottles as a kid. So chances are that that particular tree was around in the Victorian era. Pretty cool. As always, leave no trace. So I'm just cleaning up any mess that I've made, any shavings on the floor I'll throw into the river, and then good to go. Job's a good one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, drop me a comment. Don't forget to hit the bell button if you enjoyed the content, and I'll see you on the next one. Later.